For some people, flying is a breeze, yet for others, it's a terrifying experience. If you have a fear of flying, it may not be necessary to put off that dream vacation or send someone else in your place for that important business meeting anymore. Help is available, and I have someone here today to tell us what it is.
This is Travel Talk, bringing you information for the traveler with experts in the travel and tourism industry. Your guide, Linda Kenny Mersch.
There is a growing awareness about the large number of people who are fearful about flying. With me today is Captain T.W. Cummings, Director of Freedom from Fear of Flying Incorporated. Captain Cummings, what approximately are the numbers of people that we are talking about who are afraid to fly?
Linda, a number of surveys have been done about this, and the consensus is that about 25 million people are fearful about flying. Flying on air, that's 1 out of 8 people in the United States. On airplanes, 12% of the people are uncomfortable, let's say. So it's a very common problem.
Are many of these people afraid to admit the fact that they're afraid to fly?
There is a cover-up on that, but most people who are fearful just don't fly. And many of them will admit it because it's a rather popular conversation piece on many talk shows. You hear people almost bragging that they're just scared to fly on airplanes.
Is it okay to be anxious or nervous about flying?
That's one of the big things in overcoming the fear, is the acceptance of the anxiety that you feel. What the fearful flyer does is try to avoid that because he's afraid that he or she, that it might run away with them. So acceptance, maybe we'll talk more about it later, that's a very important part.
How safe is flying today?
During 1980, 81, and 83, in the United States, 900 million people, almost 1 billion people, flew without one fatality. That's 10 million takeoffs and landings. The average flight was 800 miles.
That's a lot.
Now, that's an impressive statistic, and if I have time, I'd like to say comparatively, during that same time, 140,000 people died on our highways. In fact, 135, I think it is, die every day
that's a lot of
on the
people.
nation's highways. That's more than die in a whole year of our worst year of flying.
It certainly is. We'll be right back after this break.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trained to be a travel professional. You can learn the skills to meet the basic requirements for obtaining employment with airlines, travel agencies, cruise lines, corporate travel departments, and other travel-related industries. Be a part of this rewarding career. Enroll now in the Travel and Tourism Management Program at Miami-Dade Community College, North Campus. For more information and a free brochure, call today at 347-1093.
Captain Cummings, what part of a flight do you think would cause the most stress for someone who is flying?
Most people say that the takeoff is the most frightening, and that's because of several reasons. But mostly, it's because they're leaving home, they're leaving familiarity, they're leaving security, and they're venturing. They're taking off into an area that they're not familiar with, and particularly not familiar with what feelings they might have.
Are there other fears that they stress? In other words, they mention that they may have claustrophobia on a plane. What can you do about that?
Well, claustrophobia is the #1 complaint of people who attend my seminars or who order my cassette tapes. And the second one is the fear of heights. And thirdly, of not being in control. And what can be done about it is what my seminars and what my instructional tapes are all about. And that's gradually confronting it.
Many times on a plane you hear these strange noises, again, especially on takeoff and landing. People who have maybe never flown before or are afraid to fly because of these sounds, how can we help them to overcome this fear of the noises?
Only the fearful people are concerned about those noises because their hearing apparatus, their hearing sense rather, and their feeling sense is turned up to maximum. If they're frightened, they become super alert to anything, and so any noise being foreign to them is alarming. Again, what can you do about it? There's a lot of conditioning that would have to go into that. Listening to those noises, like on my tapes, I have many of those noises they'll become accommodated to them. But they're frightening because they're different. But they're particularly frightening because they're set up. They have set themselves up to be frightened.
Would learning what these noises meant, or for instance, when the wheels go up on a plane, it makes sometimes a terrifying noise. Would learning about that then help the person to recognize the sound and relax
It
more?
would indeed. Anything that they can learn about, any familiarity. The problem is the not being familiar for the person who's set up to be frightened. But any familiarity
Will
with
breed
the
confidence.
aircraft, with what it does, with weather, with the operation of with even walking into the cockpit, which I urge the people that I work with. I said, ask to just take a peek in the cockpit. And you'll find crew members there like myself and like you. You were a flight attendant. You find them on the plane, and any familiarity helps.
Has studying psychology, which I understand you did, has that helped you in understanding these people's fears?
It's helped immensely because basically it's a psychological problem. But more than my study of psychology or the familiarity of phobias that I've studied also quite thoroughly, is the so-called empirical knowledge that I have, and that means that I've worked with thousands of people now. I've worked with more people than anyone else in the country, and that's what's really helped me to be effective in helping someone overcome their fear.
From my own experience, I find out that the older I get, the more fearful of flying I get. Is this common to a lot of people?
I'm glad you brought that up because it happens very commonly. Not only getting older, but also sometimes with things like promotion or marriage. Some people don't become frightened until they become married or until they have children. These are all factors when fear seems to suddenly come in. A person in the last class, a lady in the class I just finished in Cleveland, said that in her survey, she said she became frightened. She was going through the trauma of a divorce, and at the same time, both of her parents were terminally ill. Now, all of that happening at the same time, she may have taken a flight, so she's attached her fear of mortality, all of that she's attached to the airplane.
I see. So this is common then as the older you get.
Very common.
Even for someone who may be experienced in flying, may sense later in life that they get this fear.
Because some people, as they grow older, look for more security. They become more aware of their own mortality, and they suddenly think, how could I risk it? Well, I'm not in control if I'm on the airplane, so therefore that may jeopardize. When truly it's about the safest place next to this television studio that one could be.
Could be in. No, I understand that. It's funny, too, that I will send maybe a member of my family on a flight, never thinking that much about the fear of something happening to them. It's when I personally fly. It might be the anticipation of the flight itself, getting ready for the flight, but I always anticipate a little bit of fear.
You see, I had a letter last week in which the man underlined, the major part of my problem I've now learned is he said 95% of my problem I've now learned is anticipation. So the people I work with, all of them say that. I anticipated it would be so much worse. They what-if themselves into a tremendous state of anxiety. It's not important, but that's how they program themselves. That's what they put in their computer. What if this would happen? What if we crash, one lady said. What if the pilot is drunk? What if one of the engines fail? All of these things are completely off the wall. It's 10 million to 1 that anything like this would occur, but that's how they accumulate their fear and how they feed it.
And sometimes it's difficult not to feel this way, even though, as you said, it is off the wall. I know it's off the wall, but I still feel that way. So how would...
It's all right for them to feel that way. They just have to recognize that they're feeding their fear with those thoughts. You see, thoughts, feelings, and fear, or thoughts, feelings, and joy.
Exactly. And
Or
some
thoughts,
people...
feelings, and relaxation. So they're feeding, they're just gluttonizing their fear with those kind of thoughts. So they just have to recognize it, and they say, wait a minute, I'm going to give equal time to the thought of how wonderful it's going to be when I visit people in Chicago, or the fact that I can breathe and move and maybe reduce my anxiety.
So,
they have to recognize that they're doing their own programming, and they can program in a different way.
in other words, concentrate on the positive rather than the negative. At least try to concentrate on the happy aspects of the trip.
Even concentrate might be too difficult a word. At least direct your attention to some positive factors rather than, someone called it drowning in a saucer. And that's what they're doing.
In other words, you still feel like they're drowning.
Right.
Exactly.
They feel overwhelmed. You see, any phobia is a fear of the symptoms. The heart rate increases, the viscera, the guts tighten up, they may perspire. Some cases they may tremble. If they're standing, their knees may feel weak. And so they're saying to themselves, oh my God, what's happening to me? Well, all they're doing is have the normal reaction to joy, too, by the way, or standing up to get married, or graduating from high school, or suddenly meeting an old friend they haven't in a long time. All of these things happen then, too. Good things. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to come apart at all. In fact, no one that I've ever worked with has ever had a truly traumatic episode.
I see. What about taking sedatives or maybe having a small drink before you get on the plane? What does this do?
In the small book that I have that's instructional, I say a small drink for a small fear. But anything more than that is a way of trying to cover up the fear, in the same way this is trying to avoid the fear, or closing the eyes, or getting drunk. All these ways of trying to avoid the feelings of fear. And what we want to do is get in touch with those feelings, let them come and know that they can control them. Anything to do with avoidance, as in the case of booze, only increases the threat because they haven't confronted it.
I see. So what we've got to do for people who have the fear is concentrate on it and find out what can be done to help you overcome this fear. This could probably be used in many aspects of your life. Fear of getting married, fear of teaching that first class, fear of planning somebody's vacation that's so important.
Fear of risking speaking to a stranger or approaching a customer, or the fears that you might have had in just putting this program together, and the fears that I might have had before I came here, that I might not answer your questions clearly and directly, whatever. These are common, but once we learn that it's all right to have those feelings, that everyone does have them. That's a part of being normal and human.
It's amazing, too, that a lot of people I know will admit, I'm afraid to do this and I'm afraid to do that, but very, very seldom have I heard someone come right out and say, I am afraid to get on that airplane. I do not want to get on that airplane. We'll be back in just a moment, and maybe you can give us a few hints and suggestions of what we can do to overcome these fears.
Be glad to.
Thank you.
There are two kinds of success. One is very rare and sometimes not immediately recognized. A power to do what no one else has done. That is genius. But the average person who obtains success is not a genius. Rather, it is someone who has taken ordinary qualities and developed them beyond an ordinary degree. Success developed at Miami-Dade, your community college,
where successful careers begin.
Captain Cummings, there really aren't too many programs available to people to help them overcome this fear of flying that we've been talking about. You have two programs that you offer that have been quite successful. Could you tell us a little bit about them and why they've been so successful?
Well, I've held seminars in most of the major cities, working in association with all of the airlines. I've worked mostly with Pan American because Pan American has been very helpful. I mean, not only with the fearful flyers, but with me in helping put the program together. But why has it been successful? Well, number one is there are so many people that need help. And the people that come to my seminars are highly motivated people. They're sick and tired of being fearful. It has blighted their romances. It has limited their job opportunities, certainly their travel opportunities. Mm-hmm. Many of them have been awarded trips to Japan or anywhere in Europe through incentive programs, and they haven't been able to take them, which has much upset the other spouse considerably. So I'm dealing with highly motivated people. Another reason it succeeds is because through the years, the 10 years that I've been doing this, I've learned what helps them. One thing that does help them is deed information, and I have a lot of films that I show them. Thirdly, to be able to talk with people about their fears, to be able to talk with fellow fearful people. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous. The alcoholic can relate to another alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And so these people are finally in a setting where no one's going to criticize them or tell them they shouldn't be fearful or why don't they forget it. They're in a setting of people that understand them. Secondly, they have, or thirdly or fourthly, whatever it is, they have my leadership and my wife who works with me now. She's a counselor. And they have our leadership, which is proven through the years, so they have an expectation of being helped. But I think a tremendous factor is the AA, I call it, the Alcoholics Anonymous factor. Being drawn together in a group where everyone has the same problem, mm-hmm. but more importantly, they have a common courage, and that courage is a beautiful thing to see. And when we finally take the optional graduation flight to see them holding hands together, even crying together. By the way, those tears aren't tears of fear, they're tears of joy and relief to finally begin to get the monkey off their back.
It must be a real relief for these people who, as you said, have maybe missed out on a lot of things because of the fear of getting in a plane and actually being able to relax. The tension may just be too much and overwhelm them that it's not worth it. So they give up these trips.
Right, and they, once they do it under supervision and with tools that I give them to cope with, then no longer is this overwhelming, threatening, mm-hmm. immense fear that they have. It begins to dissipate quite quickly. And I've had a number of people, well-educated, achieving, sharp people, say, it's the most important thing I ever did in my life. Mm-hmm. Well, for me to be a part of something that is overwhelming in
Wonderful.
Itself.
It certainly is. You have seminars that you offer, and you also have something that you can do at home, that people who are unable to attend a seminar. Could you describe maybe what...
Okay, I have, you might call it a home study course or a self-help course, which is a set of cassette tapes. There are 2 cassette tapes, in fact, and a small booklet of additional information. And this first teaches people to relax. It teaches them better understanding of their fear, how to cope with it. And then the second part of the tape takes them on a flight, and I'm sitting beside them. And we have the sounds of the airplane with this, and we're taxiing, and I'm telling about the tires, make a little noise early in the morning when they're a bit flat on the underside. And then we taxi out to the takeoff position. And then I have the sounds of the engine as we roll down the runway. I'm telling them to sit back and take a deep breath. And then we take off, and then I tell them about flying through a storm, mm-hmm. and flying through moderate turbulence, and about approaching the land. I take them through the whole flight.
And they're experiencing the sounds, the noises, the feel because of the
security and the quiet, the comfort, and the non-threatening atmosphere of their own home. So that the desensitization process starts mm-hmm. to take place. And then speaking to them as a so-called captain, that carries a lot of credibility to them.
Absolutely. I'm sure you have a lot of questions asked of you because of being a captain for so many years, of just how safe is it up there, and have you ever had anything happen that frightened you, and how you can remain so calm. This must help people a lot.
The calmness, I just want to mention that the U.S. Airlines spends a tremendous amount of money and time in training people like me to the ultimate. I mean, they give us training in all possibilities. And our calmness comes not because we're really calm people, so to speak, although pilots usually are, but not because of that, mostly because we're prepared. As I tell the people in my booklet, I've had 200 fires on an airplane, so to speak, but they all occurred in training, engine fires, so that if one were to ever occur, and I never had one in airline operation, but if one were to ever occur, we know exactly what to do about it. We can do procedurally and calmly. We can handle it. That's reassuring to them.
That's reassuring, plus the fact that the crew is well prepared. I, as an ex-flight attendant...
The flight attendants particularly anymore, they emphasize safety more and more.
More and more.
And they are saying our number one job is we're safety people on the airplane. And the number two job, of course, is to get the customers to come back again.
Exactly. Do you have some suggestions that we could give the listeners that maybe will be flying too soon to take one of your seminars or your home study that might help them relax?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. First, if you're fearful, don't be ashamed about it, because it's such a common problem. And it happens particularly to intelligent people, to achieving people, to outgoing people, sensitive people. So if they're fearful, they're not unique at all. The uniqueness in doing something about it or facing it. Go to the airport, and because some of the people I work with haven't been able to go to an airport. So go to an airport and watch the airplanes land and take off, or go onto a perimeter road and watch that. Go through the procedures of going toward an airplane. In fact, try to find an airline that will have available a traffic agent who could take you on an airplane. If there are 2 or 3 of you and you are indicating promises of travel, you'll find a cooperative airline. I know Pan Am has done this many times, and I've done it a lot with people. Getting on an airplane without the threat of takeoff is very helpful. Some more quick things. Oh, here's something that David Susskind liked. I told the people I was working with to buy a magazine that was rather like Playboy or Playgirl. Now that will either startle them and they'll think, well, you know, how crude and how improper, or else they'll be intrigued with it. And either feeling is better than fear. Recognize also that when you're on the airplane, you're really safe, and that the only thing that the problem is created for you only by your thoughts, and that so the symptoms are all you have to worry about. You won't come apart, you won't become hysterical, you won't stand up in the aisle and run. Accept the fact that you're nervous, accept the rapid heart, and know that you can tolerate it. Also that the fear goes and comes. It's like waves. But they do need some conditioning, and the cassette tapes, frankly, and the book will do that for them. They need some training. They need some knowledge of how to cope. They can maybe buy it, find it in a book on phobias. There are phobia clinics, many of them in the United States. That would help.
Do you think that training, for instance, travel agents to be more aware and sensitive, not that they aren't, because I know they are to a degree, but to be able to recognize these fears is more what I want to say. Would that, and to be more sensitive to these people, would that be helpful?
It would indeed, Linda. And it's, I'm glad you brought that up, because I get inquiries from travel agents all the time, and sometimes, interestingly enough, it's about someone in the office, because the fear is so common. So in my seminars, I have travel agents, always I have psychologists, occasionally a psychiatrist, many physicians, attorneys in the seminars. But the travel agent can help a lot, and I'm hoping one of these times to at least publish a little informational booklet that they could hand to people that would be able to help them.
Right, so that they maybe would admit, number one, I am afraid to fly, and number two, I definitely want to fly, it's not that, but where is the help available? This is very important.
Because the feeling can be so immense and so terrifying, so threatening, so dreaded, and that's what makes it a phobia when it becomes so distorted that they just will not confront it. You know, we spoke about 1 million people, 25 million people.
That's a lot of people.
It is an awful lot of people, but very few will do something about it because they feel the thing is so great, nothing could help me. John Madden, the popular football coach and commentator, doesn't fly because he feels anybody that feels what I feel can't be helped. Of course he can be, but he's not aware of it, and millions others aren't either aware that they can be helped indeed. They needn't be helpless, they needn't be hopeless.
That's right. Well, I hope that more people will make mention that, of their fears, and that they'll recognize that there are programs available. You said that airlines are very cooperative with understanding the people's fears, and that maybe it would be possible to go to an airline and or to the airport and get familiar with the sounds, get familiar, talk to people that are in the industry, maybe even work outside sales for a travel agency or something where you might have an opportunity to once in a while travel and be around it. I know the excitement is catching, the excitement of travel, and maybe that would keep people from...
It would indeed, because the less they avoid anything connected with the airplane,
Well, the fear
the
just
more they start
grows.
confronting it. Yeah, the fear grows when they avoid it. All phobias, or all very severe fears, are fed with a pattern of avoidance. Whether it's an elevator, and people I work with, often they don't get on elevators because they've started avoiding them. And the more they avoid it, the more the threat comes. But anything connected with the travel industry would help. But mostly they need familiarity with that airplane.
It's a beautiful machine. It's a very safe machine.
And it takes us to places we want to go,
And
to
that's
see
right.
people we want to be with. It's been a part of your life as a flight attendant, and certainly a very big part of my life.
Yes, it has. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to fly. And Captain Cummings, I thank you very much for being with us today. I know that it's important that people be aware that there are programs available to help them so that they too can experience the excitement and the freedom to fly. And thank you for watching, and please join us again for more Travel Talk.
For more information, please write Travel Talk, Miami-Dade Community College, 1380 Northwest 27th Avenue, room 3124, Miami, Florida, 3